Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. Thanks for tuning in to Yard Coach, live from Brook and Pond. I was doing a chore here the past week or so, and it was mowing this monster lawn that you see surrounding me. And I thought about it a second. I said, I'd like to take an unofficial poll. And that is, are you a mulcher? Or are you a bagger? Or are you a third style of mowing? And I'm going to give you some professional tips and some advice on if you are one or the other, what'll benefit you. Hey, I'm glad you're here. Let's get this thing started, shall we? Hey, back in the day when I was a young college prep and I was studying ornamental horticulture, one of the classes that I had to take was agronomy, and they kind of taught me all about how to take care of lawns, what happens, what grows, what doesn't grow, how to fight diseases and feeding and all the other stuff that goes along with it. Back then, that was the 70s, I also learned a little bit about this new theory of mulching lawn clippings in such a fashion that it returns nutrients to the soil. That was good in theory. Everybody knows about lawn mowers that bag clippings that you have to empty into some kind of a repository somewhere. But what about this mulching thing? So we have the mulching style of mowing, and then we have bagging, and there's also a third kind, and it's called rough cut. And rough cut is basically a style of mowing for the lazy man. And when I say that, I don't mean to be derogatory. I basically mean that you let it go till it's like this lawn was when we first got in here, 8 to 10 inches tall. And you just go in and you butcher it right down to 1.5 inches, 2 inches, and you just shock the living hell out of the grass and everything else that's there. Rough cutting is not a good way to go about mowing a lawn. It really isn't. You end up with problems. You end up with weed germination, weakened root systems, burned root systems, dried out root systems. They're a way for people to postpone and put away the job that should be done probably once a week, and instead they do it every 2 to 3 weeks, depending on where they live. Anyway, we're going to stay away from rough cut. We're going to talk about mulching, and we're going to talk about bagging. Now, mulching, the big takeaway from all this when it comes to mulching is you have to mow frequently. You have to be able to get out there sometimes twice a week, and you cut just a little bit off. And you have a style of mower that has a mulching blade and preferably a mulching deck on your mower. So it vacuums up the clippings and cuts it 2 and 3 times and deposits it back on top of the lawn, which eventually sifts down and supposedly is going to break down into nutrient. Most of that nutrient is only going to be nitrogen. There's not going to be a lot of micronutrient, and there's not going to be a lot of potassium or phosphorus going back in the ground. But since most grasses really require nitrogen to keep growing correctly, that's where the mulching theory really comes in. Mowing frequently is the key. If you go a week to 10 days and then go out there and mulch, oftentimes what you get is you end up with a large amount of clippings or organic matter that literally, like this lawn did here, it literally ended up windrowing into a row that I had to go rake up 3 times. And what you see, the little trailer here, is 10 cubic feet, and I filled this thing heaping 3 times. That is not where a mulching mower intends to be working. Now, could I have left it? Yes, I could have. What would have been the result? The result would have been those windrows would never have broken down. Probably for a year there was that much clipping. And underneath there you would have ended up with a yellowing and probably a die out because the windrows were probably about, 4 to 6 inches deep. Just a small example of what happens when you try to mulch a lawn after it's grown up a little too much. You end up with an excessive amount of clippings, and if you don't rake it up, you end up with the beginnings of yellowing, and this is only after 3 days. I specifically left this on the lawn just for an example for you guys to see. Windrowing is okay, but don't forget to go back and clean it up. And if you're mulching, cut a lot more frequently, like twice a week during the growing season. All the cool season grasses are going through their thrust right before winter right now. So if you have fescues and bluegrasses, yep, they're gonna need a cutting just a little more often. You warm season people, it's starting to slow down, but there'll still be a need for at least a once a week cut. Anyway, hey, that's just a small sample of how much I took off this lawn when we moved in last week. So mulching really works best with a little bit of mow on a Friday night, mow on a Monday night type of thing. And there you go. That way you have just little bits. Now what about this bagging thing? Bagging has been around forever. And for the most part, it's still the #1 choice for commercial operators that are doing residential yards. They end up going in, mowing whatever size turf that they're required to do, dump the clippings in a burlap sack, more like a burlap tarp or even a plastic tarp, and then they haul it off to the landfill where it ends up getting recycled. Bagging, a key to success is don't let it go, especially during the growing season or a couple weeks after feeding, not to let the grass get too tall. You know, a more frequent mowing is much more healthier for the lawn, so you're not taking off. You really shouldn't take off much more than 1/3 of the lawn blade at a time. Now, during the cooler season, like where we're out now, I mean, we only have a high today of 48 degrees. So if you bagged it or you mulched it, you could, like I have the lawn set at about 2 inches right now. And that's plenty for this time of year. Next summer, come July and August, I'll probably let it go up to 3 inches. And that'll be plenty because we don't get super hot up here in Maine. We really don't. So mulching or bagging, which one are you? I would love to have you drop a comment and let me know. And tell me why. Tell me why you choose your particular way. Are you a mulcher, a bagger, or a rough cutter? You let me know. So how did I go about tackling a lawn that was neglected for well over a month? Is I cut it the first time on the highest setting. It probably took it from 8 inches, probably down to maybe 5 inches. And then I stopped, raked the whole lawn. The second cut was the next day, and I ended up taking it down to about 4 inches. And I had a whole nother bunch of windrows that I had to pile up and dump. Then finally on the third day finally got to the final level. And I had a little bit of windrow and piles that I had to pick up. If I had gone out and done it all at once, #1, it wouldn't have been very good for the mower, certainly not for the blades. And it was kind of damp, so all I would be doing is gumming up the mower deck underneath. It wouldn't be able to discharge it anyway. So in that case, take a little bit at a time. I have always been a bagging type of lawn care DIYer, I really have. And when I did some professional lawn care, I was the same way. I would end up going out there and mowing once a week and bagging up depending on the size of the lawn and putting it in. On the West Coast, we had yard and garden cans that we would use to fill up at the customer's house. So during the growing season, oftentimes it was 2 bags per yard, and then in the off season, maybe 1 bag per yard. Now, what about your feeding? Right now, I have time for 1 more feeding before the chill of winter starts to really descend upon us. We have our first sub-freezing temperature coming up next week. So I'm going to get some, I'm always been a Scott's guy, and I always use their Turf Builder line. So I'm going to go get some Scott's Turf Builder fall and winter feed. You can find a description of that in the Amazon link down below. Help us out just a little bit. But 12,000 square feet of turf here is probably going to require 3 bags. And I'll get that down next week and call it good for the year. Now, will I need another mowing? Nah, I don't think so. So for my lawn care, I have to switch it up now because unless I go out and get a discharge chute and a bagging receptacle for old Bessie here, my whopping $540 46-inch cut Husqvarna that I found on a yard sale, hey, I'm just going to be a mulcher from this point on. And I'm going to keep it at a height where it doesn't really need to be raked off anymore. Once a week should be fine. Now, if I was bagging it, that means a walk behind. I'd sure get my steps in for the day, but it would probably take me the better part of an hour and a half or more to walk and mow this whole place. There's a couple little rumples and a couple little fall offs down here that get kind of tricky if you were walking behind a mower and doing it. It's got some, whoever put it in didn't do the greatest of jobs. I used to also be a purebred type of perfectionist when it came to my lawns. Bluegrass and dwarf fescue. Now I have to be comfortable with Chewing's red fescue, bluegrass, and some broadleaf whatevers that happen to be in the turf. And that's how it's going to be. Next year you're going to see some of this turf disappear. I'm not going to have 12,000 square feet. I'll probably cut that thing down more like 7 or so. We'll have vegetable gardens and some other ideas that are coming along. But back on topic, what are you doing? Are you mulching? Are you bagging? Are you one of those rough cutters? I would be really interested to know. Drop me a comment or go to the community page that Maestro's going to set up and take the poll. It's kind of just pure curiosity on my part. But that's what I have for you today. Not as long of videos right now, simply because we got so many other things going on with our new Brook and Pond homestead here. But we'll catch up with you next Friday. Please don't forget to subscribe and drop me a like. Comments are always appreciated. And thank you to all of you who finally pushed us over the 10,000 mark. But we have worked really hard to bring you some quality education. We're always open to critique, and we'd also be open for ideas. So don't hesitate to put those in, or you can email me personally at youryardcoach@gmail.com. Thanks again, guys. As always, to your landscape success, I got a little more work to do down the driveway, and I'll catch you next Friday. As always, bye for now.